Assalamu alaikum. How are you doing today?
I'm pretty well and certainly thrilled by getting a seat at this table, I should say. Thanks for the invite.
I'm happy to turn the mic towards you and discover your story. I know you've been in the broadcast space for the longest time, but let's look at who is Ashraf Garda before the mics, before the microphones, before the accolades, before the stages.
Well, I mean, I come from, so my surname Garda is I can tell you now, so we come from Fitas, the original Fitas Friede Dorp or Page View, right, in Joburg. And I mean, we're a very well-known family in that community. But outside of that, I can tell you now, wherever I've been in South Africa, it's a surname that's synonymous with cricket, right? Because we've had a history of family members playing cricket, being officials in cricket at different levels all through the years. So, you have like a ridiculous situation where I go to school and to a new school, and the teacher, and you go for your first PE session, and the teacher sort of recognizes you, and you still lie to yourself. It's like, "You're a Garda, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Okay, we're playing cricket tomorrow for the school you picked." So call that nepotism, where your family name suggests that you're a decent cricketer, which whether I was or wasn't is another whole conversation. So, I mean, that's where I come from. And I think we also come from a family, I don't mean my core family, but extended members of my family who are all public speakers in some way or the other. So there's a whole lot of that, which is quite interesting, right? But I mean, that's really where I come from, and getting into the media space or really the communication or the space of being this conversation architect, I think came about by a chance, really. One was the ongoing passion for consuming media, as a consuming radio, consuming TV as a viewer or a listener. And then, significantly, there was a community radio station sort of started up in the 90s. And at that stage, remember, before community radio, there was commercial, mainly SABC, and nothing else, okay? So when they started up, I was involved with a local football club in Homestead Park for kids, right? And there was a cup final a week later, and I suggested to a radio station called Radio Azahir, which then became The Voice community radio station. I suggested, you know what, why don't you guys cover the tournament? Because it's good for you guys, and in fact, it'll also be good for the parents because their kids will never get their names heard on air ever. At that time, just think about it, right? Like never. And they're like, okay, that's great. Can you set it up? And I organized the guests they should be having on the day before the cup final. And only on the morning of the interviews with other people, right, they call me to say, you know what, none of us can speak sport, man. Don't you think you can handle it for us? Now, that was not part of the plan, not at all, okay? So that first setup where I was the producer, setting up interviews for other sports players and managers for somebody else to interview them, then by chance happened where I then interviewed them. And it was so interesting because the first time I then interviewed anybody, it was not one person, it was like 6 people, which you would think is a nightmare. You can't do that, right? But that's what we did. But the more important part is, now, up to then, I'd never been on air anywhere before, right? And when I started talking, like as we're talking right now, and then you have this first ad break, I still remember the station manager putting up a big sign through the glass window and she said something that has stuck with me for the rest of my life. She says, Ashraf, your enthusiasm is infectious. Welcome aboard, right? And in reality, I have not stopped talking since, So, be careful who you set up things with. You just don't know where it'll take you, yeah.
Wow, that is powerful, hey? And that has set the tone for the rest of your life.
It has. So now, I mean, whatever else I do ultimately is defined really by the ability to speak, to talk, to communicate, and to bring people together.
And your family life, your wife and your kids, What role did they play in supporting you in both your quiet times and your busy times?
I think the role is an interesting one. I mean, my wife, Jamila, has always been by my side in terms of following the journey. Of course, they can't play the role in saying they're going to coach you because they're not, right? I think the sounding board role is critical. The sounding board of, hey, we like that, or I think that's not good enough. to give you an example, I mean, I'm wearing this jacket against this black outfit, black top today. And the last thing I did before I came, I told my wife, I said, hey, what do you think? Does that work? She says, yeah, okay, that's fine. So it's that sort of thing, right? I think beyond that, from a family point of view, I think what's very important is the role they play is in me not taking it for granted, meaning for them, I'm their husband or dad who's a broadcaster, but you get home and you're a family member. That means there's no special treatment for you because you're the broadcaster. And that may sound like trivial, but I think it's very important. Because the truth is we have different lives and different roles that we play, right? So that role of like, okay, you do that, that's great. But now this is family, and that's something else. So that role I think is important, yeah.
And if your younger self had to look at you now, what would be most surprising?
I think it would be that I was talking, because I can remember very clearly being a very quiet lighty in my younger days in school. And I remember this very clearly one day, being called up to give, a speech. It's probably like grade 7 or something like that. And like everybody else was called up, and me getting up in front of the class and not saying a word because I was too shy, or like just staring there all the time. And then after a while, like the teacher calls you out, like almost like being punished. And when I think about that position, and now wherever I go, if I attend an event and if somebody else is talking and I'm sitting in the audience, I'm like, I wish I was there, meaning alhamdulillah, I'm very comfortable in the public space, public speaking space here.
And being in the public space, did you ever get on a stage as a mentor or a teacher, but walked away with the lesson?
Well, look, there's lessons every single day. So it's not like they are not, and the lessons are not just about maybe a wise word or a nugget that you receive, right? I mean, I was MC at an event 2 days ago, right? And this guy called Abdullah Varachia, who's called a strategist, really brilliant mind, and he quoted something. I mean, maybe two things that come to mind, like, we talk about return on investment, and he says, what about return on time? Which is interesting. And then he made the other point to say, and I better remember it, the opportunity of a lifetime must be taken in the lifetime of an opportunity. Now, that's like recent. Okay, so what I do, I make notes all the time. So there may not be lessons about how to speak and how to engage, but like there are pointers every single day. There's no question about it. How different people introduce them, how they sit, how they talk, how they engage, every time I do it. And I make notes here.
And you impact South Africa every day. Was there a moment that impacted you personally?
So this is the strangest one. People often say, like, I mean, how many people have you interviewed and who have you really enjoyed interviewing? And if you ask me, like, what has impacted me, it's this year. So, I'm on SAfm Radio now, and I was before, and in between that, there's been a 5-year gap when I was not there. So I'm sort of back at SAfm, right? But often when I'm traveling, I always say, hey, we're going to be in Langa tomorrow. Come and say hello, right? So a few years ago, we were broadcasting in Langa Township in Cape Town, and I said, we'll be there. And when I was there and sitting in the audience, this person who emails me actually, right, and says, Ashraf, you said you're going to be in Langa and I must come and say hello. Well, I'm so-and-so. I'm outside the town hall in Langa and I have a problem and I demand, that's the words, I demand to meet you now. Now, I never saw it as a threat, just so you know that. In that moment, I had a sense of a listener who I've impacted enough to say, come and say hello, and wanted to say hello, and he had a problem and a need, right? So I go outside and I meet the person, and his story is so typical of so many South Africans. I've got huge issues about my housing, massive backlogs. I don't know who to turn to. I speak to X, Y, Z, and it goes on, and I just get turned away, and I don't know what to do. So you're here, I'm desperate, I need help. And in that moment, I'm there, and I introduce him to the probably the Minister of Housing Development at that time, and they engaged directly, and I don't know what the end result was, because it could take a while. But in that moment, you see, this is the interesting thing. It's not about and of course I interview well-known people, right? But it's not about that. It's about how do you impact on a one-on-one basis? And how can you use your influence to change society? So in that moment, when this person demands to see me and I come out of the town hall at Langa and I'm able to connect him with the Minister of Housing, I'm able to impact society. And therein lies my power. So it's not the fancy high and bright lights. It's like I impacted that person's life. And that's powerful.
Yes. And I'm sure that would stay with you forever.
Yeah.
So from all the platforms that you are on, which one would you say makes the greatest impact?
Well, look, now, I mean, I'm trying to think now what I do now. I mean, so no, they all equal, very different. So, I mean, typically what I would do in a space of, say, in a month, I broadcast on radio every day. I host a talk show on SAfm Radio called The National Pulse. And really, it's a reflection of the pulse of the nation. And that's very powerful. You speak to the whole nation, 3 hours a day, you engage them. That's incredible. On the second part, we've spoken about it. I do a lot of public speaking, whether it's emceeing, moderating, or as a keynote, and at a professional level. So obviously you get paid for it, and people engage you, and that's great. And if I look at some of my engagement just recently, again, understanding the need for the role of people in understanding industrial psychology and understanding the culture of workplace, tremendous, right? So that I've had the privilege all the time. But then the third one is the Champion South Africa project that I drive, right? And that project, the end goal is like, can we build South Africa into a champion nation? And you may say, what does that mean? It's like, I mean, a champion nation is when everything works out. Best healthcare, best in education, no potholes, right? Safest place to live in. Everybody's tuned in and switched on for their country, right? And so on, right? And of course, we're not there. We're a mid-table nation. And if we mess up, it could be a relegated nation. But I want us to win the league. I want us to be champions, right? So that's the end goal. And without fussing about stressing to say, give me the dynamics of what does it really mean? It doesn't matter. What it just means, we can be better at what we do as a people in this country. And that as well, the ability, therefore, having started that project a few years ago, to be able to then integrate that project into my life, where there's not a day that somebody doesn't come to me and refers and includes the word champion in their conversation with me. Whether they're teasing or not, what that tells you is you have set that on the agenda and they get it. And therefore, my role then as, let's call it the founder, but also the champion spotter, to spot champions, to amplify champions, which I think you do through this project, by the way, and to use the amplification to get others to be champions is tremendous. Because I always say, I mean, I'm in the business ultimately, in terms of my purpose, I build champions. So I'm able to now integrate all of that. When I'm speaking as a keynote speaker or an MC, the theme of building champions comes through. When I'm a guest with you now, at the back of my mind, it's not you and me. There's a broader audience. And I'm like, actually, you who's listening or you who's watching, I want to build you into a champion. So that theme comes through. When I host a talk show on radio, I want to build champions. So therefore, to answer your question in a long way, actually, they're all very, very equal. Compartmentalized, but integrated at the same time.
And what sparked Champion SA?
It's a conversation myself and my son Zayed had actually about doing something that really focuses and highlights achievement, right? And that's really what it was. Of course, it's evolved, and I think there's a need for it to evolve even further, right? Where we want to scale it up further, we need to either create more funding or more revenue streams to make sure that we can sustain it and to scale it, because the more we scale it, the bigger the impact on the country. And the truth is, if we say, we use this mantra often. We say, champion people build champion nations. And it's worth people to reflect on. Like, think about it. You can't build a nation to be a champion nation without getting the people to be best in class first. So people have to be best in class, then who they represent. So champion people, champion nation, that link is obvious. So yes, some of the things that we do evolves over a period of time, and there's many, and we're open to, suggestions and collaborations with, so there could well be someone watching us now to say, I need to connect with this guy. I think we can do something. Hey, listen, we're open to that, because there's no way we as a people can do things on our own. Co-creation is just fundamental to what we need to do.
And with that being said, what would the attributes of a champion be, or what is it that you look for to incorporate a champion into Champion SA?
Well, I mean, there's two parts. First of all, the word champion is a fascinating word. It's a noun and it's a verb. By noun, it's best in class. You're a champion. You're number one at what you do, right? But the verb is you champion great causes. So then you don't have to be the most well-known person in the world. If you champion a really great cause and we think that cause is in synergy with our goal, which is to build a champion nation, right? Then that's great, you see. So for example, to be completely negative, if your cause is, I champion a cause where I want to increase violence in our country. That's a cause, but it's a bad cause. That cause is not aligned to building a champion nation. So clearly that type of organization or person would not be congruent with what we're trying to do. But conversely, if you're saying, I want to champion I champion a cause that is able to open opportunities for people, something I feel strongly about. When we talk about a seat at the table, the typical table is like 10 round table and it's taken by, 10 people. The problem is we got 60 million people in the country. So how do we get 60 million people to fit when there's only 10 seats? We actually have to build a bigger table, right? Now, my point is, assuming if you came and said, hold it, I'm doing something that's ensuring that the table of opportunity is broader and bigger, then you're championing a great cause that in effect is aligned to what we do at Champion South Africa. Hopefully that makes sense.
That's a beautiful cause to work for. And if you look at the national pulse, what is the conversations that South Africa should have right now?
What we're having right now is we're having issues around the national dialogue and whether it's a good thing or a waste of time. We have issues about the GNU and whether that's a good thing or a waste of time. The issues of xenophobia, foreign nationals, what place they have in our country, unemployment, issues around inequality. I mean, those are the issues that impact us every day. What we should be having, and I really feel we need to talk about all those things because we reflect the national pulse. So if the pulse feels all of that pain, then we must reflect it. But what we do need to do, and I probably need to pay more attention to it, is we have to find a way in our conversations to connect people to this. I say this way, we often say, what is your purpose, right? And I mean, you don't have to answer it, but you in your mind, you know what your purpose is. And a viewer watching us like, I've got a purpose. So fine, whatever your purpose is, great. The next question is, what is the national purpose? What is South Africa's purpose as a country? And I can tell you now, most people don't know because we don't know, and neither do I, okay? And to give you an example of what I'm talking about, in 1990, the purpose was end apartheid. It's very clear. In 94, it was nation building. Around 2005, it was 2010 World Cup. Everything we ever did for 5-10 years focused around the building of the 2010 World Cup. Since then, what is it? Fighting corruption is not a purpose. Purpose must be something higher. So we as a country are inadequate in finding a cause to rally around, a unifier for the entire people, right? Now, I'm saying to you, we don't have that. We need to have that. But this is the important conversation we need to have. Whatever your purpose is, and whatever we think the national purpose is, so even if we don't know what it is, in simple terms, the national purpose must serve for the improvement of all people in our country. So we know that, right? The important conversation we need to be having every day, and I will use this opportunity even now to you, is like, how do we align the personal to the national? You see, too many people are brilliant at what they do. And the benefit of what they do is they obviously earn more money. They're going to get paid for it. They're comfortable. They go on a holiday. Some people make money because they go on holiday. So, the airline company makes money and the hotel they're staying. That's great. Okay. And that's fine because the economy works that way. But too often you hear the narrative. It's like, I'm comfortable. I'm settled. Sugar. I'm fine. I'm saying, how do you make sure what works for you works for the country? How do you make sure when you win, South Africa wins? And when South Africa wins, you win. Now, that's a term we often hear when sports people play. When Siya Kolisi lifts the World Cup, or Themba Bavuma does it when they won the World Cricket Championship the other day. It's like, for my country. But we don't hear a person who's struck a magic deal for their company. Let's say they major suppliers in South Africa, and they've been able to supply the best, but also something globally. It's like, well, you know what? This is for my country. That they understand intrinsically that when they win, South Africa will win. South Africa will benefit, even if it means they have to hire 1,000 extra people and therefore employ them, right? The country will benefit. So what I'm saying, that conversation of how can we link personal purpose to national purpose, and to get people to be so ingrained in that from the time they're in school, to understand the need to connect to a higher cause, in this case here, is the number one conversation we need to be having. It's also the number one conversation we're not having.
That is insightful. I think you're right. We need to obviously look at being more determined in getting to that level.
Yeah.
But you're so purposeful and driven in what you do. How is it that you ground yourself, like personally?
I think it's a difficult question. I mean, I don't know if I can, you literally ground yourself to say, just be there. But you do, well, look, first of all, I enjoy my moments of quiet. I really do. So I spend a lot of time engaging with people, right? In the public spaces, and then obviously with family. I absolutely love reading. I hardly ever go to bed at night without reading one chapter of a book, right? Mainly factual stuff. But then I spend a lot of time just my own company. And maybe that's just a way of grounding myself. I think the other part, the more moral role of grounding yourself is I'm very aware of, and that doesn't mean I'm perfect. Of course, we all have flaws and errors in our makeup, but I'm very aware of the role of, say, Muhammad, or the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not just in the life of a Muslim, but in the life of the world. And it's something I touch on often, that of all his great attributes, the one attribute that Allah has described him in the Quran, he talks about him as being the Rahmatul lil Alameen, the mercy unto the worlds. So that's a sunnah, in the fact that Allah said, you are a mercy unto the worlds. So when we then say adopt sunnahs, there's many sunnahs we can adopt, from the clothing you wear or he wore, to the size of the beard, to how we step into a house and greet and not greet, all that type of thing. But amongst the sunnahs, the most powerful of them all is like Rahmatul lil Alameen. If he's the mercy unto the worlds and we follow the sunnah, how can we be a mercy unto the worlds? And the worlds, not world, right? And I think that is such a powerful way of understanding where we are in the world. So on a daily basis, are we able to be a mercy unto other human beings?
That is beautifully said. I think if we all just showed a little bit more kindness, things would be very different.
Yeah.
And what is misunderstood about you?
I think let's put it this way, for people who, and I go back to an interview I did on radio a long time ago, and this person who shall remain nameless for now, when I was going to interview her, she told me she saw me, I was presenting a TV show called Interface at the time, and I subsequently presented special assignment on SABC3 for 4 or 5 years, which I hosted, right? But this was on radio, and she's like, oh, I've seen this guy. He's so serious. He's got this steely-eyed look about himself. I'm freaked out about it. And when we finally chatted, it was so chatty and comfortable. And I say that because I think for many people here, when they don't know me, they get a sense that I'm aloof and therefore unapproachable. And the reality actually is the complete opposite. I absolutely love engaging with people, particularly on a one-on-one basis, because I like to understand their minds, who they are, what they're doing, where they are now, where they want to go. And the only way you can do that is having like the type of one-on-one conversation we're having right now. So that I do find, and I think it's also depending on the type of shows you host. If it's high energy, hard questions, and they think that's what you are all the time, and like, hey, when you're away from there, you're just another guy, man. We really are, and like you just get paid to ask questions, Yeah.
And what do you do for fun?
I read, number one. It is for fun, because I have always enjoyed reading. In fact, I'll just digress for a second. If you ask me, what's the one thing that's given me an edge in life, right? And this is so important. It is the ability to read a lot aloud. For some reason or the other, when I was a lightie, and I don't know why, when we used to get the newspapers every day, maybe the first 5 lines of an article, I would often read aloud. What I didn't realize, I was actually training to be a broadcaster. I would always do it. So that gave me an edge. So when I read now, it's not like a favor. I absolutely love reading, right? So that's one. The other one is a big pastime for me is Manchester United Football Club. This miserable team that's giving me lots of heartache, but I follow them and I watch them, and it is a great passion. I'm not obsessed about it, but I watch them. In the old days, the old Dynamos Football Club that came from Baker Street in Joburg, that is the club that I followed, and since their demise, really, I don't. So I do enjoy that. I follow all different sports, across the board, and then of course I'm one of those guys who's latched onto this thing called paddle, right? So I play on average once a week, sometimes twice. Started off as a learner or a beginner. I'm still a learner, but I'm very connected to that. And now, besides playing, I may have told you we've got an Instagram account called Paddle News Network, which is really one of the largest in the country and possibly one of the largest English-speaking Instagram accounts in the world, actually. Because so whether that's a pastime, technically yes, no, but I think as a sport, the playing of it has been tremendous because the level of connections that we've made outside the actual game has been just sheer magic. Yeah.
And a legacy that you would want to leave for your children or your future generations, what would that look like?
I'd like to leave a legacy for my country, really. I mean, I know it's the family and the children, but ultimately I'd like to think that ultimately when my time is up in the world, then people would say he embodied the spirit of champion people, build champion nations. So if you can just internalize that, what that means, and that what it means to our country, then that's a legacy I want to leave. Champion people, build champion nations. Like, this guy tried his best to do just that.
Yeah, that's amazing. When you speak with the people and for the people, how is it that you maintain your own authenticity?
When you say speak, you mean like as a, when you're talking in public spaces or privately? What is it?
Either, like you speak for the nation, you are having conversations with them. How do you maintain your own authenticity?
I don't know. Sometimes I think we give too much thought about that. It just comes naturally. But for me, it's quite simple. If I say my purpose is to build champions, right? Now that's individuals, not even the country, just to build champions. Then I think the conversations you have authentically should be about building champions. So when you speak to a person, it's like, what can I do and say that will build that person into a champion? And once I get that, I don't have to be anybody else. I mean, that's me.
And someone starting out in the broadcasting space or in the champion space, what would your advice be to them?
I think, first of all, read a lot aloud, as I've mentioned, right? And be aware that the one thing that, if you're in the broadcasting space, is the great privilege is your ability to impact and influence. So not just even linear as in radio or TV broadcasting, you could be public speaking elsewhere. All of that is communication, right? And if you get it right and you get people who follow you, then you have impact. And when you have impact and influence, you are able to give a message to them that other people, it's like the door's open for you. So it's so easy for you to pass a message when the door's open compared to another person where the door is closed. So your platform allows you that. And that really is your great power. So if you have designs on getting into the media space, then just understand that. They're like, why? And ultimately forget the fame and all the other things that come. And it does come. But what must drive you is your ability to be able to use that platform to impact society, because it will.
And your favorite go-to quote or a verse that you use daily?
Well, I don't know if I have a favorite, but look, maybe this one I'm going to repeat it. This: champion people build champion nations. It is quintessential in terms of champion South Africa, but in terms of what drives me, in terms of what I do.
And was there any questions that you wish someone asked you but never did?
Well, not really, excepting, you perhaps the other one is like, take me through your mind, a minute before you go on air, or share what goes on in your mind when you're interviewing people or when you're on the platform, and what do you think? Because the reality is, hey, we're all vulnerable. This nonsense that we're all perfect, and everything just scripted. Our mind is not scripted, right? Our mind's got a whole lot of, as I talk to you now, there's so many things going through in my mind, right? So how do you manage that, considering there is pressure? There's no such thing as no pressure, right? But that's good pressure. For a person who's speaking on a public platform, when you're emceeing an event or you're giving a talk with 2,000 people, it comes with its own pressure and stress. But that's a better pressure than the person who's sitting in the audience who hopes they can be the speaker and they're not getting a gig. So they have a different stress and I have a different pressure, which is very linked to success. So I think that part of like understanding the human mind in dealing with these complexities, I don't get asked about often, and I think it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it's amazing what would go through your mind at that point. And if you had to look back at everything that you've achieved, what's your greatest achievement?
I just think to impact society, really, to be able to go to places, to be recognized as a person humbly who has done their bit for South Africa, really. Because I'll say this, it's important. Our country is not perfect, and I understand people make decisions about where they want to live and what they want to do with their lives. But for me, based upon who I am and what matters to me, the thought of achieving anything under the flag of another country is a complete no. It has to be centered around my country and my flag. And that's really just the fact that I'm conscious of that and my role of connecting, when I win, South Africa wins.
You need to walk around with a little proudly South African badge.
Often when I do speaking, I wear a South African flag, actually. Yeah.
To close off today, what words of wisdom would you leave us with?
I think, so on a personal level, people watching us and they're hoping to take something out for themselves. So they watch a guest, they listen to the guest sharing what they share now, and they're like, okay, that's interesting, and what's in it for me? And really, what's in it for you is this. If you're motivated by the fear of losing a job, or motivated by the fear of losing money, which is understandable, or other fears, that's completely understandable. But the quicker you understand what your purpose in life is, the quicker you not need anyone to motivate you, because you'll be completely self-motivated. And you may say, well, how do I discover it? Listen, that's not even a perfect science. I mean, if you asked me 10 years ago what my purpose is, I would have probably said something else. So what about it? As long as you have purpose at that time, it's not like you've signed up a document to say, I will not change from that purpose, right? You won't do that. But I think that's the most profound thing I could share, to say, put your time today to just spend time and reflect, to say, honestly, what is my purpose? And if I don't know, let me guess what my purpose is based upon my interests and what freaks me out. So what bugs you the most when you don't do it is a sign that suggests the journey that you want to undertake, right? And if you get that right, then the next thing is your jobs must reflect your purpose, not the other way around. Too often people think their job is their purpose. The job has to be a manifestation of your purpose. So if your purpose is like, I want to communicate with the world, for example, let's say you, and the way I want to do it is through this medium of these fabulous YouTube podcasts you've been doing, right? Just as an example, then this is now, and your job now is that I want to go and wash cars. Can you see, they're not in sync with each other. If you want to communicate with people, then you need to be in this space, for example, right? So yeah, nothing else. Focus on getting the youngest children possible to discover their purpose. Because I think if you embrace your purpose, the younger you do so, the better. If you ask me, amongst the regrets is like, that was not told to us before. Even me, you don't know. You don't know even when you're doing it right, you still don't know. And you just wish that even schools had a lesson on purpose, personal purpose, but national purpose at the same time.
That's beautifully said. I love that. Thank you so much for joining me today, from taking time out. It was surreal sitting across you, listening to you in person. And it was an absolute pleasure.
Well, thank you. And really a privilege. Thanks for the invite. But I think collectively through this process of you and I talking and the third person, which is the person watching us, I'd like to think that we're all just a little bit richer today than we were 30 minutes ago, just by being part of this conversation. So, thank you for that.
Absolutely. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.